following training is sponsored by the Niagara Library System. We serve our member libraries in Niagara, Orleans, and Genesee counties. Please visit your local library homepage and use your library card to get access to streaming videos, downloadable music, audiobooks, ebooks, and even more from the comfort of your own home. Thank you. Hello, good to see everybody again. I just ran into another story on the internet and reminds me of the importance of stories, and libraries are more than books, oral histories, and things of that nature. All of my references that I'm using are, of course, here. They'll be here on the screen. Let me scroll down a little, and they will be in the description of the video. So as always, show the original author some love, and let's go ahead and jump into this. Once again, here I was seeing a library connection inside random articles I find on the internet. Brenton Mock popped up on my screen, and he originally wrote the article, Why Detroit Residents Pushed Back Against Tree Planting, and this was published in City Lab. And of course, the headline did its job and attracted my interest, but the article itself had me thinking about libraries in particular. Mock writes, a landmark report conducted by the University of Michigan environmental sociologist Dorcetta Taylor in 2014 warned of the arrogance of white environmentalists when they introduced green initiatives to Black and brown communities. One Black environmental professor Taylor interviewed for the report, Elliot Payne, described the experiences where green groups presume to know what's best for communities of color without including them in the decision-making and planning processes. Anytime you presume to know what's best for any other adult, you usually get some pushback, and it describes it here. And Payne talks about here, I think a lot of the times it stems from the approach of, oh, we just go out and we offer tree plantings or engaging in an outdoor activity, and if we just reach out to them, they will come, Payne told Taylor. In fact, this is exactly what was happening in Detroit at the time that Taylor's report came out. In 2014, the city was a few years deep into a campaign to reforest its streets after decades of neglecting to maintain its depleted tree canopy. A local environment nonprofit called The Greening of Detroit was the city's official partner for carrying out that reforesting task, which it had started doing on its own when it was founded in 1989. By 2014, TGD had received additional funding to ramp up its tree planting services to the tune of 1,000 to 5,000 new trees per year. To meet that goal, it had to penetrate neighborhoods somewhat more aggressively than it had in the past and win more buy-in from the residents. So that's important. The tree planters met stiff resistance. Roughly a quarter of the 7,500 residents they approached declined offers to have new trees planted in front of their homes. It was a high enough volume of rejections for such an otherwise valuable service that University of Vermont researcher Christine E. Carmichael wanted to know the reasons behind it. Now, to me, this is the truly interesting part. So here's in the article. The residents Carmichael surveyed understood the benefits of having trees in urban environments. They provide shade and cooling, absorb air pollution, especially from traffic. They increase property values and improve health outcomes. But the reasons Detroit folks were submitting no tree requests were rooted in how they have historically interpreted their lived experiences in the city, or what Carmichael calls heritage narratives. A couple of African-American women Carmichael talked to linked the tree planting program to a painful racist moment in Detroit's history, right after the 1967 race rebellion, when the city suddenly began cutting down elm trees in bulk in their neighborhoods. The city did this, as the women understood it, so law enforcement and intelligence agents could better surveil their neighborhoods from helicopters or other high places. Now, the city says it was chopping down trees at a faster clip at this time. Nobody disputes that. The city was flying helicopters over their homes at one point, they say, to spray what we now know as toxic DDT from above on the trees to kill the trees so that they would be easier to take down. The government's stated reason for this mass tree chopping was that the trees were dying off from Dutch elm disease and then spreading across the country. These were the competing heritage narratives of the same event, the clearing away of trees in the 1960s. The two narratives are in conflict, but it was the women's version based on their lived experiences that led to their decision to reject trees today. It's not that they didn't trust the trees. they didn't trust the city. And there's a couple of pictures here included with the article, and these are some of the tree planters. And this is one of the residents with a rather large limb. And then, of course, planting trees, the roots have a tendency to kick up the pavement and kick up the sidewalks, which, of course, needs to be then maintained. So who maintains that? They have really valid points. There's more to the article, but that was just a quick highlight as to why oral histories, that really is what caught my eye. And even neighborhood stories are so important. Another incident comes to mind, and this one was actually with Google and Buffalo's Fruit Belt neighborhood. I didn't realize this was all the way back in 2008, but Caitlin Dewey talks about this, and it was her article in the Buffalo News that was actually reprinted here on the geology department at UB, one of their blogs. In fairness, neighborhoods are flexible. They rarely have official boundaries in the United States. As a result, there's plenty of room for residents to argue about shifting names and borders and things of that nature. But as Hempel Nichols first told city officials back in 2008, the Fruit Belt's existence is not a matter of debate. One of the city's oldest and poorest neighborhoods, it has appeared on official city maps for decades, bordered by Michigan and Jefferson Avenues and Cherry and North Streets. With the growth of the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, residents have become even more protective of these borders. The expanding campus has caused rents to spike in the Fruit Belt, said Henry Taylor, a professor of urban studies and planning at the University of Buffalo, and land speculation and other development have pushed some longtime residents from their home. In that context, the sudden dominance of the term medical park, which has no documented historical or community usage, has become a point of anger and anxiety for many residents, including longtime community organizer Dennis Barr. To Annette Lott, a community organizer who grew up in the Fruit Belt, the online, this is important, this was the online misrepresentation of the Fruit Belt was a lot like the medical campus itself. It loomed over the Fruit Belt and cast a shadow on everything else. The Fruit Belt was the Fruit Belt for years, for decades. I know the Fruit Belt. My parents know the Fruit Belt. I'm sure their parents knew it too. So the Fruit Belt was the Fruit Belt for years, Lott said. Now all of a sudden you live there in that community and it's called Medical Park. And what you begin to lose is your identity as a community. Here is the crux of the problem with the Fruit Belt. That an online map could wield so much influence does not surprise Monica Stevens, a geographer at the University of Buffalo who studies online maps and misinformation. In a 2014 study, Stevens showed that two popular mapping sites, Google and OneStreetMap, omitted businesses and landmarks of interest to women because the bulk of their creators were men. These maps have real power and they are not infallible, she said. Of course. So what does all this have to do with libraries? Of course, we select and maintain books, movies, and other collections of stories. We are story curators, not just book collectors. Not archives, but stories, and we reflect our communities so much. I know so many of our libraries do such a wonderful job of representing the communities, getting out there with both outreach and then in the collection itself. That it's just, we really do a great job, I think. Now, the Smithsonian has a great webpage, of course, that gives a lot of information about collecting oral histories, how to do it, what's good ways to do it. And I did take the time to listen to a few that I found in my web wanderings, and that's linked. They're in my citations, and congratulations, kudos to all of our libraries who are so embedded in the communities. Thanks. I hope you found this interesting and useful, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye now.